Hi, this is Jenny Matthews. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to address reassurance seeking with an anxious child. You know how this goes. It is the thing that drives you nuts. Your child asks you over and over again if everything's going to be okay. Are you sure that you're going to be okay? Are you sure you're going to be home when you say you're going to be? Are you sure I won't get sick? Whatever it is, your child has some kind of worry or worries and can't help but continually ask you for reassurance. And it's frustrating because as a parent, you feel damned if you do and damned if you don't. If you don't answer the question, their anxiety just gets bigger and bigger, and you want to just keep the peace. So you decide to answer the question. But that doesn't seem to make everything okay. It actually makes them ask more questions. And so it's really, really frustrating, not only for you, but it's also frustrating for them because they're not developing then the skills they need to be confident and independent because they're relying on that reassurance. So we need to put a stop to the reassurance seeking, and here's how. So you're going to first start with talking with your child about this change that you're going to make. You need to let them know so that they're prepared for you changing the rules with anxiety. Anxiety doesn't like change. So you got to just let them know. Doesn't mean that they're going to then like it, but at least you're preparing them for what's to come. And then they can get on board with that change a little bit better. So it might look something like this. You might say something to your child like, I know that this is really hard for you, and I really want to help you. But I notice that when you ask these questions about when I'm going to be home and if I've gotten home yet and all these things, that it's really anxiety in charge of your brain. And I don't want to keep feeding anxiety. Do you? No. So I'm going to say something different instead. And here's what that is. So that's going to be then where you need, as the parent, to insert a different response. You need to let your child know what you're going to say differently so that when that comes up later, they're like, oh yeah, this is what we talked about. They're not going to necessarily like this, and that's okay. They're not going to be like on board like, woohoo. Okay, that's all right. But you still need to let them know, and it will get easier the more that you do it. So here's some examples of some responses that you could say instead of answering that question. You could say something like, it sounds like anxiety is in charge right now. What could you say back? Or you could say something like, is there a helpful thought that you could have instead? Or is there a coping tool that you could use? You could say something simply like, I'm not going to answer that question. You know the answer to that. So pick the response that you want to use and let your child know about that up front. Okay, it is really important not only for your child to know that response, but for you as well, because it is just automatic for you to just answer those questions when they come up. And it's going to be automatic tomorrow when you try this new response, unless you know what you're going to say instead. So you don't want it to just slip out of your mouth, because then it kind of changes the plan that you talked about with your child, and they're like, oh, mom wasn't serious anyway. And so it just messes things up. So know in advance. Okay, so once you know what you're going to say instead, you've communicated that to your child, then you want to go ahead and start. Now, you can just start immediately, kind of like a ripped off like a Band-Aid, like I'm starting tomorrow. Or you can do a more gradual approach depending on how excessive and how many worries your child has that involve reassurance seeking. So, you could rip it all off, or you could do it gradually. So you could say, okay, starting tomorrow, I'm only going to give, one answer for reassurance seeking a day, right, for the next maybe couple of days, and then I'll go to 0. You could switch that up maybe based on situation. Maybe you decide that you're not going to tackle like the germ fear right away, but you're going to maybe attack the test anxiety ones. So you'll just start there. and kind of get rid of the reassurance seeking around that particular fear first. So you have to really work this one out between you and your child about what's going to be best. It's easier to start with the one that causes least amount of anxiety first before you get to the one that's like most anxiety producing. So if you do it gradually, great. So start with, reducing the amount of times you offer reassurance seeking until you get to offering none. After you get to that point, taking it a step further is really important. This part is where then you would introduce some doubt. So this is really tricky. So this would look like when your child then brings to you this question. Let's say it is they are really anxious about whether or not they're going to get into college. You might introduce some kind of doubt at this point, where you might say something to the effect of, some people don't get into college. We'll just have to wait and see. That's going to raise anxiety. But again, that is something that we need to have happen for your child, not right away, but after they've done all these other steps, so that they can learn to tolerate some uncertainty and learn on how to get that reassurance from themselves and not from others. So that's kind of the outline for where you want it to go. A few tips on implementing this process would be to be really specific about the plan, right? Make sure that you really outline like what you're going to be addressing, how often, when, with who, because you want it to be really crystal clear. And you also want it to be really consistent. If you answer that question one time, even when you're in the phase of where you're not going to, it ends up kind of breaking down the whole system, because your child then realizes that then if they're just persistent enough, they'll get that reassurance and comfort that they're looking for. The other thing that's really important is make sure that everybody is on board. If you as mom or dad are the only ones, if only one parent is doing this, that's also not going to be helpful to your child, because your child's just going to go to the next person to get that reassurance. So this includes siblings. It includes maybe even the child's teacher or the daycare provider. So really think about who else needs to be on board and go from there. And the last thing is, two more things. Use rewards. Okay, it is going to be hard for your child to buy into this, and it's going to be really challenging for them to change this. And so try to do some things to make it a little bit easier for them. One is to reward them for following through, for using their coping tools, and having a good response to it. So use that to help keep them engaged in the process. Also, it might be helpful to increase some attention with them out, in other areas, because it'll make it easier for everybody, because the tensions are going to rise in the house when you don't give this answer. So if you can build in some extra love and hugs and attention, and other fun things to do, it will make it an easier time for everybody. And so that is the last piece, is the expecting the increase in behaviors. This is going to get tough. Anxiety does not like change. It has certain rules, and what you're doing is you're changing them. And it's a good thing to change them, but it's going to increase anxiety and maybe even some anger, meltdowns, you name it. And I just want you to know that that is absolutely normal, and it's okay, and to just stick through it. So you have to remind yourself of that. So I hope that this is helpful. I know that you can do this. Good luck. See you next time. Bye-bye.